Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build, 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 this time power, this time to build power, this time to build power, this time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I am your host, Chris Hampton.
And this is Nate Drolet.
And together we form Doris and Donald Fisher.
Why am I never ready for these? We just did 2 Patreon episodes in a row. And even one of them, I was like, wait, is he going to do it this time?
Doris and Donald Fisher.
Fisher Gap, is that a thing? No.
You're on the right track here.
Oh, I don't know.
Doris and Donald Fisher in 1969 in San Francisco founded The Gap.
Oh, okay. I see where we're going with this.
You were on the right track because today we're here to talk about the things that the gym doesn't prepare you for when you go outdoors, the gap, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess this is kind of a Gym to Crag performance edition.
Mm-hmm.
These aren't things you're going to learn in your Gym to Crag classes, but they're also things that you're not going to learn by just climbing in the gym. Some of them you could potentially learn if you were really intentional about it in the gym,
Mm-hmm.
but the gym doesn't necessarily set you up very well for these things.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we'll go through a lot of strategies in this episode on how to learn these things. Some of these things could probably become their own whole episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But these are things you should be on the lookout for if you're new to going outside, if you've been going outside for a while and people think you're a dick. Maybe these are some of the things you need to be paying attention to.
That's not on my list. I don't. We have clearly separate lists. Yeah.
And I think these are just things to keep in mind. Be really intentional about when you go outside.
Yeah. Or if you feel like you do go outside quite a bit, and I've got clients who fit in this, and you just don't know why your performance isn't carrying over the way it should.
Yeah, true. And I think this episode, we're just going to go in like list fashion here.
Mm-hmm.
You go, I go, we'll talk a little bit about it, and we'll keep this thing moving because this started as a list of like 4 or 5 and pretty quickly grew to a list of nearly 20.
Yeah. I think our title for this that we had in our little list app was Top 5 Ways.
Yeah.
That
It's no longer the top 5. It's all the ways.
Yeah.
Why don't you go first?
All right. First one, painful holds.
Yeah. Good one.
Climbing outside hurts. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I often describe climbing at Smith Rock as crimping on puppy teeth and stepping on Tic Tacs. It hurts for both. Like, hurts your feet, hurts your hands. And indoor holds are so nice. They're so comfy.
Yeah.
Ian over at Kilter, just the smoothest, comfiest holds. There are a lot of great shapers, but, you know, I always just dote on him because he creates amazing shapes that are, like, fun to grab and enjoyable.
Yeah.
Like, even great classic rock climbs hurt. Like, bleeding when you climb outside, like, that just happens. Like, that's not some, like, strange phenomenon. But, like, splitting your finger inside, that's weird.
Yeah, totally. I think, you know, that also extends to like tweaky holds that, you know, maybe you need to be a little more prepared for. For instance, I live here in Lander, Wyoming. Wild Iris has claimed many a person's tendon.
Oh, yes.
And pro climbers, you know, I watched Matty Hong blow a tendon on a 12B. You know, it's not uncommon here to get injured, and part of it's because we don't get that much preparation in the gym anymore for tiny little cramps, sharp, nasty, uncomfortable holds, and things that are a little bit tweaky.
Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. Also a lot of there's a lot of steep climbing. That's what a lot of us tend towards because it's fun,
Yep.
especially in the gym and if you like boards, which we love. But the steeper a climb, kind of the bigger holds naturally have to be. Versus if you're climbing on, like a dead vert or 10 degrees overhang, you can grab some nasty little weird holds.
Right.
But people you don't like that in the gym. Like you'll do that more outside. A lot of times you're just forced into it. So yeah, painful holds, tweaky holds.
All right. Next for me is actual top outs.
Ooh, I love it.
Some gyms have top out boulders that generally have handlebar jugs you can grab.
Love those too.
It's not some scary heel above your head mantle on frictiony horse pins, slopers, where if you fall off, you're probably going head first. It's not that style of top out. You just don't get prepared for that stuff in the gym.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say one of my favorite tips for mantles, and this is also, so anytime we would do workshops, and especially when we would work with like youth teams, like youth competitive teams, this is great for slabs and mantles alike. Keep breathing, stay calm, stay conscious. Also, like if you can just keep breathing and stay calm on a mantle, your success rate will octuple.
Yeah, totally.
Because so often people get to the top out of a boulder and in their mind they're like, I'm done, but because they're geographically, they're very close.
Yeah.
But when things start, kind of going poorly, like when it's not immediately just a handlebar jug they grab and they roll over, they start freaking out.
Yeah.
They breathe faster. They start looking around really quickly. And it's ironic because if they were, on a jug in the middle of a 45-degree wall, they would probably be more calm. They would look around and be like, oh, hey, where's the next hold? You can do the same thing. In fact, if you're mantling, half your body's probably already on top of the boulder. Just lay down. Literally relax your upper body. You can just get friction. Sometimes you can even just lift your fingers up and you can relax, take your time, take a few breaths, and just slowly work through it. Like mantling is physically not that challenging compared to most climbing, but you just have to be mentally prepared for it. Stay calm, keep breathing.
Yeah.
And that'll get you through a bunch of them.
Yeah. And that's not to say there aren't really hard mantles, because there absolutely are really hard mantles.
Absolutely.
That are quite scary, quite hard to figure out, but you're right. You take the time, don't make the immediate decision that you can't do it and jump off.
Yeah.
And, you're going to get there half the time.
Yeah. All right. My next one is time constraints. When you're in the gym, like you don't have to worry about the season ending when you want to send your climb. Like, yeah, things are going to get reset, but at the same time, like, you're probably chasing the new sets anyway. So who even cares about the thing that was set 6 weeks ago?
Right.
You're not worried about the day ending. So you're not thinking like, okay, I need to get up super early, get to the crag fast because, this sun's going to hit my project.
Right.
Ironically, actually in Houston, I was climbing in a gym with beautiful skylights and there were sun cruxes on certain walls, but super rare. And even then it's like still climate controlled. So it wasn't that big of a deal. It's more just something to laugh about, but your climb's going to go into the sun. Your climb might be, there are all sorts of things that you have to deal with for time constraints. So that's something you don't have to do as much indoors, and preparing for that can make a huge difference.
Yeah. And I think even indoors, it's like, the schedule of the setting. So, the boulder might disappear, the route might disappear in 3 weeks, but that's happening. Outdoors, you can very often feel pressured because it could snow tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then it's out. Then you can't get up the road anymore to even get to your project,
Yeah.
So that pressure of time definitely does not exist in the same way in the gym. Next for me, running it out. So just like long stretches between bolts, oftentimes the easier sections of sport climbs will have much longer sections where you're climbing without clipping. And in the gym, the bolts are all perfectly spaced. It's, in a lot of gyms, it's like do 3 moves, clip a bolt, 3 moves, clip a bolt.
Yeah.
And you never get to climb 25 moves in a row without clipping, That's relatively common when you're climbing outside, to do a lot of moves to be 10, 12, 15 feet above a bolt. Not super common in the gym, and it's something a lot of people will have to take their time leaning into a little bit at a time to get better at.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a big one, especially depending on the areas that you go to. Like, you may be wandering far from the bolt. Like when I went to Seiyus, I was very surprised how much laterally you go away from bolts.
Yeah.
I climbed on a super famous route, Face de Rat. It's a 8A plus route there, 13C for the Americans. And there's one section it's maybe 5'10", but man, you go wandering like, I don't know, 18 feet out away from the bolt line.
Yep.
Like big jugs, but man, you're out there. Like it's thrilling.
Yep. I think one good tactic you can use in the gym, if this is something you need to lean into a little bit, is just delay your clipping a little. And I'm not saying skip bolts. A lot of gyms frown upon that, but you can still clip a bolt when it's below your waist.
Yeah.
You can hang out at the clipping hold and shake and breathe a little bit before you clip. That's going to get you a little better at not feeling like you have to clip right away, getting more comfortable, being relaxed above bolts.
Absolutely. My next one is using beta videos. So this is something that does exist indoors to some degree.
Yeah, and more. Like Kaya is doing a fair amount of this kind of thing.
Yeah, so it can exist, but it's just not as common. Like certain boards, like Tension and Moon, both have a button you can press to watch videos, but it's always either some like 6'4" bro, or it's some woman who's like 4'11" and way stronger than me.
Yeah.
And I don't need to see either of those. One's not helpful and one just really hurts. So yeah, but going outside, you can find, a million videos for anything. People, all sizes and all different types of beta. And you have to pay attention. Like, you can learn a lot from videos. Like, what's the landing like? How many pads did they bring?
Yep.
Do they have a spotter? No. Because there are plenty of times where if things are padded well, you may not need a spotter. Is that spotter really close? And do 3 people in a row have a spotter in the same spot? Maybe there's a death pit you don't see. And you're like, this looks exciting. Yep. And then you go out and you're like, oh, this is exciting. There are all these different things you can learn from video, and other than just simply beta. And learning how to take that in is super important so that when you go out there, you're as prepared as possible.
Yep, totally. I'll play off of that for my next one, which is uneven landings and fall path planning.
Yep.
And this includes force spotters and belayers. In the gym, you're belaying on perfectly flat ground where there's not people's stuff ideally piled all over, and
hopefully not.
There's not a drop off. There's not a boulder behind you. There's not tree roots sticking up. You never have to shuffle pads. You never have to figure out how to flatten out a landing. And I'm not saying, dig the dirt away to flatten out a landing. I'm just saying how to stack pads to make it flatter. There's a lot that goes into that, and you learn none of that in the gym.
Yeah. Back when I was a Waco Tanks guide, that was, I like to think it's how I earned my tips, but basically people would just throw their pads out, and gaps and corners and pads are overlapping. And I had to take out a group of 10 people, 10 huge organic pads hit the ground. And I'm like, y'all are just going to break ankles. I don't know how you can have the foam to bad landing zone ratio here is incredible. Really. I'm impressed, but just go sit, go look at the wall, and I'm going to fix this for you because this is awful. So I would immediately disassemble whatever pad shenanigans they laid out and be like, okay, this is how we're going to do it.
Mm-hmm. And, part of what I said may have changed a little in recent years, especially in commercial gyms with big, giant volumes and holds, that planning your fall path on a sport climb might be a little more harrowing in the gym now than it used to be.
That's a real thing.
But, there's still not like especially when you're climbing in the lower grades, there are often going to be big ledges and things like that you have to consider when you're climbing, and that doesn't really happen quite as much in the commercial gyms, though. Making sure you don't hit that boss on your way down could definitely be a problem.
Yeah. Like, man, especially with like trad climbing, 5'6", way scarier than 5'11".
Totally.
5'6", you're hitting things on the way down.
Yeah.
Just a staircase.
Yeah. You're just bouncing off of things as you fall.
Yeah. So the next one is the dynamics of moving around a crag and trying to fit everyone's schedule in. So this, I think, is a huge one, and it's one that, man, I see experienced climbers still make the mistakes with all the time.
Totally.
Like bouldering is a great example. If you're bouldering in the gym, like, it's like, hey, we're going to go to this wall for a little bit. Okay. And there's 20 climbs on, a 15-foot wide spray. Perfect. Everyone gets to climb. Then it's like, oh, hey, let's go over there. Everyone moves to that one. You go outside and it's like, oh, there's this one boulder and we're going to be here for 2 hours. And then we're going to go to that one boulder. And a lot of people might feel self-conscious and they're like, oh, I don't want everyone to sit here and wait because like it's only my V5 here and everyone else climbs harder and they've done this already, or vice versa. I've had clients who are like, they want to break into V10, but everyone they climb with, is climbing in that like maybe V4 to V7 range, and they don't want them to have to sit at their project. But if you have this discussion early on, you're like, hey, let's split this up. Like, there's 5 of us. Also, maybe keep groups reasonable. If you go out with a group of 15 people, no one's going to be happy for the most part, especially the people who have to climb around you. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like plan it early. Make sure that, you just say, hey, like, oh, you want to get on that? We're going to go there in the morning, or we'll go there for an hour. We'll switch off. You can eat, rest for a while. We'll go to my project for an hour. Like keep switching back and forth. Make plans.
Yeah, totally. I think it's such a valuable thing. And it's also, people mess it up on both ends. Like when they go outside, there are people who will certainly play the role of like the guide, the person who puts up the top ropes, and they end up ruining their entire day because they've never had to figure out how to run logistics for a group of people of differing ability levels.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. And they feel responsible. And, man, I've had clients who are like, I was putting up top ropes and cleaning and things for people. And I did 6 pitches of 510 before I got to get on like my 512 project. Yep. It's like, well, 6 pitches of 510 is still tiring. Like
totally.
Like, especially when you're trying to do something at your limit, only 2 grades above.
Yep. And I'll play off of that with a little more rare situation, but when you don't have other options, the gym doesn't prepare you for the situation where this is the thing. This is the only thing here. I came all the way up here for this thing. Mm-hmm. It's either all I have left at this crag, it's the only boulder here. I'm going to have to hike back to my car with all my stuff and drive to another area if I want to climb on something else. It doesn't prepare you for that reality and all the challenges that come along with trying just one sequence for an entire day of climbing.
Yeah.
In the gym, if you get tired of it, if you get frustrated with it, whatever it is, you can just move to the next boulder 10 feet away that's the exact same grade. You can go pick out holds that you want to pull on more, whatever it is. It doesn't prepare you for that reality.
Yeah, that's always my favorite. I've got like the 7-go rule, which I talk about a lot, which is when you find a move that feels stopper, rather than passing judgment immediately, try it 7 times before you make any decisions. Did you get closer? Cool. Maybe keep trying it or come back in the future. If you made 0 progress, not even like you slapped your hand an inch closer to the hold, after 7 goes, maybe it's too hard for you right now, and that's okay. Move on to something else. I say this, and inevitably someone will always be like, oh, 7 goes. I mean, like, I'm going to get hurt if I try something 7 goes. And like, I never try anything for 7 goes. And it's funny because then I think about projecting outside and like, man, I'm going to spend 8 hours under this boulder. Yeah. Maybe 3 moves. I might bring a lawn chair. Like, essentially, like, I got my picnic basket. Like, I'm camping.
Yeah.
Here at this boulder.
Was it Dave Graham's post I just read where he said he would try this boulder sometimes 200 times in a session?
He did just do La Rustica. I haven't read it. I saw it. I haven't read it, but
somebody's post I just read was like, I tried it for 6 days, usually around 200 times a session.
Oh my God. Man, that
the gym does not prepare you for that reality.
How many 7 goes were there in that? Dave Graham's over here living that 200 go rule. Yeah, amazing. But I agree. It doesn't prepare you for that because, you try and move twice and you're like, I don't know. I'll try the thing right next to this.
Right.
So easy to do.
No options.
Yeah. To fit right along with that is not having your perfect warm-up scenario.
Yeah.
Like, warming up in the gym's so nice.
I love it. I love having my circuit that I can do every time and that I know really well and makes me feel like a fucking superhero.
It's great. And it's warm and it's cozy. And like, oh, you know what? My shoulders are a little tight. I'm going to go do some kettlebell, some pullovers. I'll do some arm bars.
Yeah.
I'm going to I'll get on the vert wall and climb some vertical jugs, maybe do some twisting and then slightly more overhanging. I'll go through my circuit, warm up well, hop on the hangboard, then really recruit the fingers.
Yeah.
Now I'm ready.
Do 2 heavy deadlifts just to make sure my glutes are recruiting properly.
Exactly. We're getting this all. But you go outside and you're like, perfect example. I got a buddy who was just out in Salt Lake the other day and went up climbing and went to a boulder that has V9 and a V11 on it. And he went out and he climbed those 2. And I was like, yeah, is there any good warm up? He was like, well, the top of the 11's like V4. So I did that a few times. And then I did the 9 and then I did the 11.
Yeah.
And I was like, yep, that sounds right. That's, maybe we do some pull-ups in there, some jumping jacks.
Yeah.
Like I walked from the parking lot to the boulder. Like that warmed me up. But warming up outside is very unideal a lot of the times. Mm-hmm. And it often catches me off guard whenever I'm with someone who doesn't climb outside much. We'll be going out and they're like, oh, where's the warm up? And I'm like, oh, is this really terrible thing? Or it's like, it's the bottom of the 13D. You're going to do the first 4 bolts. Exactly. We'll repeat it a couple times. And they're like, but it's 13D. I'm like, yeah, it's fine. It's whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like when I was trying Fly to the Antelope, which I made a video about on our YouTube, it's a V10 that sits by itself. There's not much to warm up on near it. The top of it is an okay warm up, but it's also absolutely terrifying and has one of the scariest moves I've ever done up high. So not a thing I wanted to warm up on.
Definitely not.
Just wasn't an easy situation. And in the gym, I would have climbed my perfect circuit and gotten on it and been ready to go. And I probably would have sent it days and days earlier because of that,
Yeah. But yeah, so something you got to kind of learn to work with as best as you can.
Yep. I will play off of that as well with the logistics to planning a day out. So not just even the day out, but the making sure all the things you need to do at work and the things you need to do at home and talking to your significant other, your partner, and, making sure all those plans are in place. And you don't have to do any of that to go to the gym for 45 minutes.
Yeah. You got to pack food. You can't stop at Chipotle on the way.
Right. Exactly. There's so much to it that's different than going to the gym. Do you eat Chipotle before you go to the gym?
Well, if I go before, I don't add meat because meat makes your hands sweat, as we've learned from Alex Magos. So I do a vegetarian burrito before. I should start actually getting protein on the side. I should get the vegetarian burrito, get the new pollo asado. Not sponsored by Chipotle, but I would be. Call me. Get that on the side, like in a little bowl or something, and then eat half, stuff the rest in the other half once I'm done. Hit that anabolic window.
I like this, but what we don't know is if your hands sweat just because you bought meat, or do they only sweat when you eat meat?
Have these like guilty sweats of
maybe
animal product.
That's certainly possible.
Science. We need to work. We need to run some research on this.
We need to figure this out.
Yeah. So the logistics of going out, and it sounds silly, but I mean, it is a thing. Like you have, like a gym bag is something that can just live in your car.
Yeah.
Versus you're going outside, you need to have your pads, you need to have all these different things.
Yeah. And if you have a career that means you're either, you need to be on call or people need to be able to reach you, you have a family, you have lots of other responsibilities, it can be a pretty big task to get an entire day away where you don't need to be able to be reached.
Yeah.
And most climbing areas, that's the case.
Yeah. In Waco, our buddy Kwong, I remember one day I was going out and we're out on East Mountain and I look over and he's got his laptop out. He was working remote and he was like, I get good service here. We're at the Try Harder boulder. And he's sitting on top of the boulder working. He's like, I just got to get a few hours in here and then I try my project in the afternoon. But yeah, so he found a spot on East Mountain where he got good enough service that he could hotspot in
That's
to
hilarious.
work remote.
We need that in guidebooks from now on. That's the new thing in guidebooks, little antenna icons so you know where you get hotspots.
Amazing. So my next one is it's much harder to avoid crowds. Like you're in the gym, you can kind of move around, go to a different wall, especially you just go to a wall that wasn't set in the last 10 days.
Yeah.
Empty.
Totally.
Or you just go where the climbing teams aren't.
And a lot of the mega gyms now are so vast,
enormous,
that there could be 250 people in the gym and there are still 5 or 6 corners where there's nobody.
Yeah. And with the amount of people who work remotely now, a lot more people are going in early so they can avoid crowds. So you can do that. And if you go outside, especially if you're a weekend warrior, and if you want to climb on good rock climbs, man, people like good rock climbs. It's weird, but they get busy.
You might get lucky. You might just happen to hit the day at drive-by when there are only, 70 people there.
Yeah.
But most days on good weather, there are a lot of people lined up for the best rock climbs at a lot of the good climbing areas.
Yeah. So that's something you have to get used to. And, learning how to communicate with people as you're doing that. That's something I was fortunate. I started sport climbing at the Reds. So you just quickly, I didn't know you could go to a crag that didn't have 80 people at it.
Yeah.
You just wait in line. That's what you chop it up, you figure out what's the lineup. Hey, is this a red point go? Are you working? Is this a working burn? And these are just comfortable, casual conversations but then I've gone to more remote crags and I'll walk up to people like, hey, how's it going? What's the lineup like? How long you think you're going to be on it? And they look at me like I've got antlers growing out of me. They're just like, there are 8 other routes here that you could be getting on. Why are you trying to get on this one?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't realize this was not a normal thing.
Yeah. And, it's a really great skill to learn and it has its benefits. You and I really first started connecting, queuing up for routes in the red.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Has its benefits. All right. Next for me, it doesn't prepare you unless you're in the Midwest or maybe even the Southeast. It doesn't prepare you for adverse conditions.
I already knew where this is going. Yeah.
I've definitely climbed in some old gyms in the Midwest that's just as humid and sticky and hot and gross to prepare you for summer in the red if you're going to climb in the red in the summer.
Yeah.
But otherwise, most gyms don't. They're climate controlled. You never have to worry about conditions. Not to mention the frustration of trying something difficult in conditions.
Yeah. And deal with rain. I actually have a photo on one of my first blog posts. I forget which one it is, but it's of a hold in TBA, the gym in Chattanooga that didn't have they would try and install like AC once a year.
Yeah.
They're like, we're getting it.
It would
And
just
then
get chalked up and die.
it'd run a week and then they're like, windows are open. They stay open. But I have a photo of a dual text, like DRCC, one of those like half moon holds. And the bottom was dual text and it was covered in condensation beads. And that was just it.
Yeah.
But most places, you don't have to worry about it. And it's great. You just go in and it's nice all the time.
Yeah, totally.
My next one is the need for core strength. Like climbing indoors, you just don't need it as much. Like you're not doing as intricate of foot movements. Like it's not a fun style to climb inside where you have to like do ticky-tacky moves, keep really tight. Like I can't, I lived in Houston for almost 2 years. I could count on one hand the number of hard foot moves I had to do in that gym where I was like, oh, I need to lock everything down. And the hard part of this boulder is this foot move.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, every rock climb I try outside, it's like, oh, there's a hard foot move. Like I remember living in Chattanooga, Jimmy Webb was talking about trying this project at Rocktown, which ended up becoming the Matriarch.
Mm-hmm.
I think he said it took him 3 days to do the foot moves in isolation.
Mm-hmm.
And when he would be trying it, like his core tension for doing the foot moves was what was failing first. Like that would end his session because they were that hard.
Yeah, I believe it. I think it has a lot to do with like, setters are able to put the feet exactly where they want them. They're able to put the handholds at exactly the angle where they want them.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that they should. Sometimes it's better to put the thing at a funky angle. Don't put a foot where you want it. Put the foot a little too far away. And, people are going to complain. Somebody's going to come in and be like, that foothold's too far away.
Mm-hmm.
So the fuck what? Set them a different boulder. Doesn't mean you have to change this one, I really think that's a big part of it. Just we've gotten trapped into putting the holds where we want them.
Yeah, and it's, and it's fun, but also it's like, and also there's just so many gyms have enormous footholds. Like,
yeah,
I would just laugh so hard. Like there were so many times I'd be like, oh, I'm on a 45, I'm on these half pad in cut crimps, and I am stepping on toasters. Like,
yeah, exactly.
What is happening? Like I could be climbing in these in my tennis shoes. And maybe that's like, I don't know, maybe there's something to that. Like a lot of setters will forerun in tennis shoes or very comfy shoes, which makes sense. Like, route setter's job is hard and like people complain about it all the time. I'd be wearing comfy shoes too.
Yeah.
But like it's not that often that I go somewhere where I'm like, oh, these are like bad footholds that aren't just like horrendous smears. These are like truly bad footholds that I need to keep my feet on and apply a lot of tension for.
Totally. And that's my next one is bad feet. I think gyms do slopey feet really well.
Yep.
I think part of it is the production. Like I didn't know this until I worked with Escape to create our inductors and diodes and resistors. How hard and expensive it is to create tiny in-cut feet. It's so hard to produce them. Why would you spend all this time and energy making this tiny little foothold that people will be willing to pay $4 for versus you could make a giant sloper in the same amount of time and sell it for $95.
Yep.
It doesn't make any sense business-wise, so nobody's going to do it. And that's why we're the only ones who do it, and Escape produces the things more as a favor for me and for the home wall owners.
Yeah.
Because they're certainly not making any money off of it, So for me, that's a big one. If you want to learn to climb on slopey feet, the gym will prepare you quite well for that. Maybe not for real friction smears. Better now. They're doing a much better job now.
Mm-hmm.
But the small in-cut, tiny little edges you have to toe into, non-existent in the gym.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'd say the last 2 years of living in Houston, like I got a lot better at smearing and moving off of slopey feet.
Yep.
But man, like going back to climbing outside more often, like I have, like my skills have degraded.
Sure.
For like, I mean, for one, using small feet, and two, like engaging my core the way I used to, which both of those I used to consider two of my greatest strengths.
Yeah.
But it makes sense to me why, I'll talk with people who climb predominantly indoors, or they'll climb like on boards a lot, and they're like, yeah, I don't think core strength really plays that big of a role in climbing. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, or they'll be like, yeah, I mean, footwork, whatever. But it's like, if you
because you're climbing outside a lot.
Yeah. If you're climbing outside a lot, like, man, those things are enormous, and like you can't have enough of them.
Yeah. And pro tip, definitely buy our footholds. They will make you a better climber, assuming you use them instead of letting your ego get in the way.
I hear they're not possible to stand on.
I've been told that.
So my next one is detailed sequences. So highly intricate movement sequences.
Mm-hmm.
There's a style, and I stole this phrase from Matt Pincus, and it's order of operations.
Mm-hmm.
And so often you'll have this outside where, okay, there's a sequence where you're not traveling geographically very far. Maybe you're only going 3 feet, but there might be 12 moves.
Right.
Like you're bumping a hand up, shifting a foot, dropping your pinky so you can set the heel in, then lowering the heel, like all these little intricate things. And each of those 12 moves, not bad, but you must do them in perfect order. If you mess up one part of the sequence, that's it. Your go is done.
You're just stuck there looking at it like, what happened? What did I do wrong?
Yeah, you're like, I forgot to move the pinky, and I'm like, I did the full span move, and now I can't pull the pinky off to set the heel, and I'm stuck. You just step off, or you can try and go, but you're not going to do it.
Yeah, I never have the problem of forgetting to drop the pinky.
You way ahead of all of us right here.
Yeah, I've been practicing that.
Living in the future. But order of operations climbing, like highly detailed sequences.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because it's like, one, it's really hard to set. Most climbing holds, like a lot of them are made to grab one way.
Right.
Like even if they're big and beautiful, and sometimes there are other ways, but like a lot of times there's one way to grab a hold, and that's how you're going to do it. So you're not going to readjust, shift, do different things. And it's really hard in the gym where holds are like a little bigger, like more beefy and cut. Like it's hard to set these small, intricate moves and where people don't just like pull through.
Yeah. And when the feet are gigantic, it's hard to stop people from just leaping off of these giant feet,
Yeah. A classic example is the World Cup just happened in Seoul, South Korea. And the finals, I think it was men's number 3, like Yoshiyuki Ogata goes out first and does the whole sequence. It's like this big dog-legging boulder that goes way out right, super intricate footwork, all these things, like hard shoulder jump move, comes back, like all these things. Second guy comes out, looks up, and he's pretty tall, skips, I think, like 6 moves.
Yeah.
And literally just like grabs one good hold and leaps to a jug and goes to the top. And it's like, oh, hopefully he's just tall. Every climber after that just did the exact same thing. Cause it's like, man, like if you like give strong climbers a decent foot and a decent hand and they can just launch off of it.
Yep. Totally.
But yeah, outside, like things are just there's a lot more like kind of fucked up holds, like weird things like, oh, this is just like a dimple that you're grabbing. Like you would never want to grab it inside cause it's maybe painful. It's just weird, but it's like I have to grab this dimple and then shift to where the dimple's the pinky now. And like, all these things.
Yeah, that leads me right into my next one, which is non-holds. It doesn't teach you how to use non-holds. I just did a boulder V10-ish thing that I had found and cleaned up and figured out the moves for, and I couldn't identify many of the things I ended up using as holds until I like got to a position and was like, how can I move out of this position? Oh, I need this thing. That's not a hold, but weird. It works,
Yeah.
And there are all these like complicated order of operations on non-holds where I'm flipping things and holding things a weird way that don't look like a traditional climbing hold at all.
Yeah.
And I think if you can understand those things a little better, know how to use them, start to be able to see them, it opens up a lot of avenues for you climbing, and you just can't really learn that in the gym. maybe there's a little more of it with volume climbing now. But those still rely on like corners and things to be able to use. It's still not nearly as subtle as real rock is.
It's very televised.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is kind of a non-hold, but the hold is there and it's like covered in chalk and like.
Right. This hold here is a non-hold.
Exactly. It's like this bright pink thing is here and you're like, oh, they put it here for a reason. Like there's, you go outside, like there's no reason that any of these holds are here. Like you just have to wade your way through this chaos. You know, one of my favorite examples of that is the Rhino in Waco. Like I walked under it before it had ever been done, and gun to my head, I wouldn't have told you there was ever a climb there. Even after it had been chalked up and done, you know, half dozen times, I still walked under it and I was like, the slopers are upside down.
Yeah.
Like I don't know why these are chalked. And it really took like climbing on it and moving across it to be like, oh, you can use these. It's insane. Like, but to have the vision for that, it's like really cool. But so much of that happens outside where it's like these little dimples and nothings like make the world of a difference.
Yeah, they can open up a door.
That is, so I'm done with mine.
That's all of yours?
Yeah.
I've got one more. And it sort of leads right out of my non-holds, and that's the skill and ability to search for beta that isn't apparent.
Yeah.
You know, yes, there are tricky sequences in the gym. Yes, there are things you may not see, but the beta in a gym is still relatively limited. And you can see all of the holds. Every one of them is pink and right in front of you. And, you know, out on a rock, you get to use whatever's there.
There are no rules.
Yeah, searching for that beta when it's not apparent that you need to go from this hold to this hold and you're not sure where you're supposed to go is a skill that you just can't learn in the gym. And, you know, it gets greater and greater and greater the more moves you're doing. So sport climbs, you know, somewhere like the Red, 5'9" can feel impossible to somebody who's a 5'12" climber in the gym because there are 7,000 chalked holds and you don't know what to do because you could grab anything. The beta's not very apparent, you know?
Yeah.
The same, just the inverse problem of not knowing where to go is all the holds are usable. What do I do now?
Yeah. That is definitely a thing. Like you can get overwhelmed with options outside so easily.
Yeah, totally. All right. I think that's a great list of things. You know, and no shade thrown at the gyms here.
No,
gyms are preparing us really well. There's no question of that. They've opened up, you know, I attribute a lot of the harder climbing in the world to gyms being available.
Yeah, and I mean, the changes now versus what things used to be, like the addition of volumes and the way holds are, and like the professionalism of route setters.
Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, we really take leaps forward year after year, and it's incredible to see.
Yeah, so no shade at all thrown at the gyms. Thanks for what you're doing, route setters, gym owners, everybody out there. But these are things that you, as the climber, need to be really intentional about. Some of them you can practice and get a little better at in the gym if you try really hard to. Some of them you're just going to have to learn outside. Put the intention into that. Be aware of it and put the time in.
Yeah.
I think that's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, and take your time. Like even for experienced outdoor climbers, like it's normal. Like in Waco, there's the common learning curve that everyone always says, like, oh, it's like, it'll take you 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like you're going to be out here, you're going to climb and it'll take 2 weeks of climbing where you're like feeling a little clunky and suddenly your feet are going to stick to the rock more. The moves are going to feel a little smaller. The hands are going to feel a little bit bigger to you. Like it just takes a little adaptation and you get good at what you do. Like if you spend more time climbing outside, you'll get better at climbing outside.
Totally. And if you're in a gym, especially if you're in Salt Lake City and you want to get better at climbing outside and you think a coach would help you, Nate is in Salt Lake. He'll be doing some private coaching through the Momentum gyms. You can hit him up through here. You can find him on Instagram at Nate Drolet.
Yes.
That's correct. You can also reach out through our website, info@powercompanyclimbing.com. We can connect you with Nate. If you'd like to get a leg up, be better than your friends. We all want that, right?
Yeah.
And you guys know where to find us. Power Company Climbing on the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the YouTubes, the Pinterests, all over the damn place. Find us there. Follow us. Please give us a 5-star review, 5-star rating. Leave us a review. I don't even know what these things are. We've been doing this podcast for so long.
Put star emojis in the review and leave a 5-star rating.
Fire emojis, I would prefer.
Fire emojis,
actually.
Yeah.
So please follow us on those social medias. Tell your friends and look for us on the Twitter. Tweet about us, but you're not going to find us there because we don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
Maybe don't know.
This time, 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 this time.